Well, hey, everybody. Getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest. Episode 161. Oh, let me get my notes out here. Do actually have some notes today. If I can find them. There they are. Actually, I can probably just pull them up here. There. All right. Let's do this. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 161 of Mike in the Midwest, our mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find me on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at beourguestpodcast.com or wherever you download your podcast, but you know that because you're a super fan of the Be Our Guest podcast, and I thank you so very much for that. And I thank you so much for your support of the shows and allowing us to do the podcast. Really, I love doing this. This is my fun time every week, and this is my one time every week on Tuesday mornings to get to step outside the Disney talk and get to talk about some fun memories from my childhood, from my past, and get to have a good time just hanging out with some friends, right? And I love getting your feedback over at patreon.com/be our guest podcast, seeing if you have some of the same memories that I have and just seeing what's going on with you. It doesn't always have to be memories of what I talked about the previous week. I just like to know what's going on with you guys. You could always shoot me an email too at mike@beourguestpodcast.com. Shout out to Margie, who is watching live on YouTube as we record today, this Tuesday morning. And also shout out to Fulton in Indiana. Hope you are doing well as well. All right. So today, what is going on in the Be Our Guest Podcast Studios as we get rolling here? Again, I hope everybody's having a great week. Thanks again for your support. It is smoking hot here in the Midwest. I know I've said that a couple times already this summer, but this one takes the cake. We have an excessive heat warning. The heat index the other day was 117 officially at the airport. Our weatherman that is on our NBC affiliate, he lives in the next subdivision from us, and he has one of those home weather stations, which Mark Yerkes, I'm still thinking about getting here at the house. I got to find a little extra income at some point. My 50th birthday is coming up in November. Maybe that's what I ask for the big milestone birthday. We'll have to see. But because that would be a big get. It's one of those things like it's not a necessity. It would be a big splurge, but I'm a weather nerd. I would love to have something like that. And the 50th birthday is a big deal. So possibly. It's either that or I want kind of an arcade one-up Wizard of War machine. I totally don't need that either. I'm a big dork, right? Stuff I don't need. I'm super practical, so I don't need any of that stuff. So I probably won't get either one. But anyhow, the weather guy that we watch on TV lives in the next subdivision over than us, from us, and he has a home weather station that is on the AccuWeather app. You know, he has it linked into the AccuWeather app. And on his home weather station the other day, the real field temperature, which is about 1/10 of a mile from our house, was 123 degrees. That is just stupid hot. I mean, I just got in from walking Riley before I came on to do the show here today. My back is soaking wet. I took her out for one lap around our lake, one lap so she could take her restroom break, 1/4 of a mile, and 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm soaking wet. It's ridiculous right now. We have a Friday night football game. It was supposed to be at 6 o'clock. They moved it to 7. Wow. So the high on Friday is supposed to be 101. The heat index is supposed to be 115 in the afternoon. Miserable it is going to be. And I just remember we talk about this. Scott and I recorded the shows this week already, yesterday, obviously. And I think we mentioned, like, it's so weird how fast during like fall sports, it goes from like surface of the sun hot at the beginning of the football season to, I remember football games at the end of last year where I just wanted to leave the game because my toes hurt so bad because it was so cold. And it goes so quickly because the football season doesn't last that long. So the temperatures, you know, we're complaining about how hot it is. It won't be long before we're complaining about how cold it is, and we want it to be hot again. So the Midwest is wild, and the roller coaster here with temperatures it'll be on before you know it. hopefully we get a nice stretch of that, 75, 80 degree weather, which we probably won't. But here's hoping. And again, shout out to all of our friends out on the West Coast. Hopefully the flooding wasn't terrible where you are. I know we had Dr. Young out there, Alan, and lots of friends out there. Pam Forrester's actually out in Southern California right now doing Adventures by Disney, which she's going to report back on for all of us on the show. Ricky's sailing the Disney Wish this week, so she's having a good time there. So this week on the Be Our Guest podcast, you get Mike and Scotty G, and you get a double dose of listener questions. We did listener questions on Wednesday, and we had a ton more. A lot of folks sending questions into the inbox via Mike at beourguestpodcast.com. So we just we want to respect that, and so we answered those questions on Friday's podcast. So you get double dose questions. And if you guys ever have questions, Mike at beourguestpodcast.com, let me know your Patreon. It'll go right to the top of the heap. So thank you so much for that. So that's about what's going on around here. Oh, what else is going on there? So the girls, Pam and my Pam, too many Pams around here. And you can hear Riley right now. And the reason you can hear Riley is because I left the door open to the studio because I'm home alone and I should have closed the door. And I apologize for that because I'm the only one home now because it's back to school time. I was just saying Pam and Mallory both went back to school yesterday. So the house is dead silent. I'm the only one here. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to leave the studio door open. It's just Riley and myself. And of course, Riley never barks. And as soon as I open the mic to talk to you guys, yes, she decides to bark. So there must be a cat or something in the backyard. I don't know. I'm looking out there. Oh, there must be somebody. Now she's actually in the studio looking out there and she's got a hedgehog in her mouth. So when she has a hedgehog in her mouth, that means she's scared of something outside. She's a tough dog. She barks with a hedgehog in her mouth. It's a stuffed hedgehog. Anyway, so that's the deal. It's weird because, it's time, it's fall and it's not fall, it's summer because it's blazing hot, like I just said, but it is back to school time. Pam is in her second day with her fourth grade class. She's not sure about them yet. Of course, she's in a very transient population school in a very low socioeconomic district where I used to teach to up in Ferguson, Missouri. And so her kids will come and go over the next month. Like she will not have the same class in a month that she has now. She will gain kids and lose kids like crazy over the first, well, it happens throughout the whole school year, but especially over the first like 3 or 4 weeks. It's wild. So kids moved in and out even all day yesterday, her first day. So she's not sure what her class is going to be like. Mallory, she was killing me because she came home yesterday. Like, it was so hot in our school. They even the air conditioning couldn't keep up because it was so hot. They had to even use fans with the air conditioning. And I had to explain to her, when I started teaching, my school that I taught at didn't even have air conditioning the first 4 years. I remember the 5th year that we taught, Pam and I taught next door to each other. They installed air conditioning in our building over the summer. We were so excited that we got air conditioning in our school. The first 4 years, I just remember going over. There was a Kmart across the street from us. It was called Cross Key Shopping Center. We went over to Kmart and I buy those little box fans. The cheap ones are like $15. And literally, I'd strategically place them, one in each of the big windows, one by the door, and a couple more. And I made like a wind tunnel. And there was a certain spot where I sat when I taught to where there was just a jet stream. And it would hit me, and it kind of made a mini tornado around the classroom, so the kids would get catch the coolness too. I mean, it was hot air, but at least it was a breeze. And I just remember because I'd hang stuff. I was big on hanging stuff from our drop ceiling. So I mean, it looked like a constant tornado in my classroom until it cooled off in like October or something. And it was just my classroom was wild because my kids would, they put their heads down on the desk this time of year and they would just stick because they were sweaty. I would be teaching and I didn't care. I was one of those teachers that was kind of common sense, right? Some of the teachers would be like, you can't put your head on the desk. Yeah, good Lord. It was 100 degrees. It's blazing. These kids are dying. Let them put their head on their desk. As long as they're kind of listening. I was dying, and back then I was still shirt and tie, trying to be the fancy teacher and all that wore off after a few years. But yeah, those are the days. But yeah, Mallory was like, they even had to have fans in the halls to try to help the air conditioners. I was like, you are so soft. We only had fans my first 4 years. Again, old guy. So that was interesting. But yeah, they're back to school. It's quiet around here. I mean, do I like it? I kind of like it because no pressure. I could, I don't feel like I got to meet anybody for lunch. I'm on my own schedule here, but I do miss having, Mallory here during the day and Pam here during the day to share my lunch with. But it is what it is. It's Riley and I. We sit here and I pet her as I'm doing the show today, and we make it through. And Mallory has cheerleading first football game on Friday night. It's going to be hot as blazes, but it'll be fun. So let's hit the feedback from last week's show. And we had tons of feedback from last week's show about when the phone was king and the pager before the cell phones. Carrie Good, thanks for being here. Carrie says, thanks, Mike, for the episode. Sorry, I've been behind in my mic in the Midwest and BOGP and getting caught up. I have lived in the Chicago area my entire life, a few years near UIC, and had no idea why they were called the Flames. I had no idea until last week either, until I saw a tweet. They're called the Flames because of the Great Chicago Fire and the resilience. And Paige knew that when I asked her, by the way. I did ask her. Totally makes sense. As part of our second grade curriculum, we learned about the Chicago Fire. The rotary phone, when you mentioned having to dial a 9, that was the worst. And if you messed up the number, hang up and start over. I did that a number of times. Thanks again for all you do. Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, so in the area we lived in, just so you know, this is just a little Mike in the Midwest trivia. Everybody's phone number prefix where I lived in Florissant was either 921 or 838. So you had either 9s or you had 2 8s. Like my buddy across the street, 838. His grandma, or 839. It was either 838, 839, because like our skating rink was 839-0515. I still remember the phone number. Spinning wheels, 839-0515. And so that was the number, right? And so I just remember dialing it. Spinning wheels roller. Give us a call. 839-0515. Oh man, those are the days. Oh my gosh. Now I'm back to the phone thing. John Luther, John, hey, what's going on? Says we had only one phone line at home, one in the kitchen and one in the basement. As an only child, I had it to myself, except between when my parents got home from work and through about 9 at night. Much like you, much of that time was spent on various BBSs in our area or talking with friends. I love it. He was a BBSer. I have no idea what we talked about for hours at a time, but we had fun doing it. My first cell phone was really just a car phone. I had bought a used car, which had a phone installed already and had to get it connected. It was a very limited use, but being able to make calls from my car seemed like we were living in the future. Exactly. I had that bag phone and it just sat between the two seats up front. And man, I thought I was Richie Rich, man, but I could only call after 9. And I was, because I'm super like, I'm very careful and cautious. So I wouldn't call till like 9:10 just to make sure my watch was off. Because I was using like a Swatch watch. It wasn't like digitally, tuned to the atomic clock or anything. So I'd just always make sure it was like 10 minutes past just to be sure it wasn't, like 8:59 when I started my call and I talked for 30 minutes and it was on like prime time. Yeah, those are the days. And you're right. Good point, John. What did we talk about for hours? Because I remember being on the phone for a long time. And again, now I hate talking on the phone. Like I said, unless you are in my favorites list on my phone will not ring. You can leave a message, but it will not ring. That is it. You got to be like in my top 10. It's got to be like my wife, Mallory, Page, my dad, my mom. I mean, very Scotty G's in there. There's a couple. There's not many people that make my phone ring. So that's about it. All right, we have more feedback here. Len, my good buddy out in Maryland, says, I am so old. When I was young, you only had to dial 7 numbers to reach each person in your local area. Me too. Same. You only needed to include the area code for long distance. Being an introvert, I have always hated talking on the phone. Same. I am thankful for our current situation where most communication is done with text. Since our family texts most exclusively, we have instructed our kids to text us a warning first if they plan on phoning us to let us know that they are calling and it's not an emergency. Otherwise, we'll freak out when our kids call us. I like that strategy. A little warning text. We're going to give you a call. It's not an emergency. It's all good. I like this. We can all learn from each other. That's what this community is all about. Len, God bless you. That's so smart. And I bet you we're all going to adopt this now. Before you call, text, let us know. Give us a heads up. You text the topic. What's this call going to be about? Give us a heads up. How about an agenda? How about a quick little outline in the text? I like it, Len. You just make me laugh. I love you. It's great. Dennis down in Texas. I bet it's hotter down there than it is here, and I'm just weak. Dennis says you mentioned the Red River rivalry game that would be played between Texas and Oklahoma during the Texas State Fair. That is always a crazy busy weekend here in the Dallas area. My office used to be located in the west end of downtown Dallas, and the days leading up to the game would see the streets overrun with fans wearing burnt orange or crimson. As for the old phones, I remember call the arrival of call waiting being a godsend for our house. My brothers and I were always competing for the phone in the house to call our friends, girlfriends, etc. Plus, my dad would sometimes have to tell us we couldn't tie up the house line in case work called. I did have a few friends that had pagers, but the only person that ever seemed to have to use them were their girlfriends. I would tease them about having a leash with the pagers. Now we all have a leash with our smartphones. Exactly. You're right. It was kind of funny because at first, the first stigma with pagers was like if you had a pager, you were a drug dealer. And then everybody got them for like a year, I think, because it was just like the cool thing to have. And then you have a code like 911, you got to call me back immediately. But then you put 911 after every page, almost said text, because but then so if you put it after everything, then it loses its emphasis, and you would come up with like all these different codes. Like if I text you, if I page you with 725, that means this. And it was a mess. I think it was just more fun to just play with and fiddle with and have in your pocket. I don't know. Those were weird times. But man, I love my little Motorola kind of teal translucent pager that I had for like $8 from Best Buy. Trisha, I just had my turkey yesterday. I had some of those turkey beef sticks you guys gave me. They were so good. I had them during lunch. Trisha says we had a rotary phone that was really fancy, cream colored with gold trim. I was so excited when my parents got a phone with voicemail capabilities because I got that phone to play with. There were many a make believe hotel and office scenarios acted out in my house. Phone services advanced by the time I was old enough to want to talk on the phone with my friends. And by that time, we had two lines. Fancy. Do you guys remember your first like answering machine? I just remember trying to record those messages and trick people, man. That was so fun. And then voicemail when it was just digital and you just got to call a phone number and just record it, into the phone itself. That was totally like living in the future because you didn't have to do it on a cassette. Because my first one at our house, we had like the mini cassettes and just regular cassette. I think you had both. I think you recorded your outgoing message on like a little mini cassette. And I think the incoming messages got recorded as a standard cassette, I think, as I recall. Man, those were the crazy times, but they were fun times. Francesca, thanks for being here. Says when I was a teen, our main phone was in the kitchen. That's how ours was, and a second in my parents' room. I'd stretch that cord. So I did the same thing. I'd stretch that cord as far as I could so I could turn a corner and have a private conversation out of earshot. The best thing was when the cordless phone came out because then I could go into my room to talk. Before call waiting, I remember how annoying it would be to try to call someone and repeatedly get a busy signal. In those days, it was not unusual to just sit on the phone and talk to a friend for hours. That seems unimaginable now. Kids at school would talk about having to make an emergency breakthrough when they couldn't get through to someone. Not sure if it was a real thing or not, but rumor was you could call the operator and give them a phone number and explain that the line's been busy for a long time and they could break through on the conversation. I'd love to hear if anyone has ever done that before and if it was a real thing. Francesca, breaking news. That's not breaking news. I need to make I'm going to load a breaking news sounder into our board because we need one. But here's the deal. I was telling my wife, Pam, about this conversation at dinner the other day. Because she had four sisters. So you can imagine with one phone line growing up, they didn't have money just like I didn't, but they had one phone line, four sisters. So you can imagine all about the same age, what this was like at their house. So one time, Pam, my wife was the one that was the culprit, I think. She was talking, and my wife talks. She still talks on the phone. Like she still likes to talk on the phone even now. Apparently she was talking to a friend or somebody, and her mom did an emergency breakthrough. She was on the phone so long. Like the operator broke in and said, Dolores is calling and needs to, this is an emergency, needs to speak to, whoever. And boy, they got in trouble because that phone was tied up so long and she couldn't get through, and they got in big trouble. But yes, it is a thing and it can happen. And I think it costs money for that to happen. I just remember like it's still to this day spoken of in their family. Her mom did an emergency breakthrough. My mother-in-law Lane, yes, her real name's Dolores, yes, busted in. So there you go. And finally, my good friend George Aloha says, Aloha, Mike. Thanks for your thoughts and prayers for Maui. This hits close to home for me. I didn't live on Maui or have family there, but Hawaii is a close-knit community that is rooted deeply by its culture. Even out here in Seattle, when I meet someone from Hawaii, we have an instant connection as if we've been friends for years. My heart hurts for the people impacted by the fires on Maui. We're still thinking, because that's going to go on for weeks, months, years, and it is sad to see. But that is the one thing that when I see the coverage, every time I see an interview with a resident from Hawaii, from Maui, from uh, the little city that starts with L, it's that the Ohana is so true. I mean, it's not just a Lilo and Stitch movie. These people are picking each other up. They're rallying together. And even the people that have lost everything, they're out there supporting somebody else. They're not the victim. They're not the one that's getting the support. Many times they are probably getting support on the side, but they're out there picking each other up. They're rallying together. God, they're so resilient, and they do love each other like family, even if they're not blood related. And that is such a cool thing. I love the Hawaiian community. I've never been there, but I can't wait to go out there someday and just experience that. So George, we're thinking of your people out there that, your former, you know, uh, residents. Cause I know you spent so much time out there. That is just, what a way to represent, because I just think the Hawaiian people through this tragedy have shown, if we could all be like this, if we could all show the world how we can take care of each other like this, it's such a testimony. It's amazing. Anyway, back to it, George's comments. Going back to the topic of MTV, my parents were so cheap, so I never got MTV until later in life when it just became part of a standard cable package. Same. So my exposure came from having friends who had it and would sit and watch the videos from hours on end. However, the video that comes to mind whenever I think of MTV is not Thriller, but Take on Me from AHA. Yes, the old cartoon merged black and white. Yeah, God, it's a great video. Like you, I'm old enough to remember rotary phones. I remember using a pencil to spin that dial instead of my fingers. Me too. I'm envious that you got the see-through clear phone. I always wanted one of those as well, but I think the ultimate was wanting a Mickey Mouse phone. Thanks as always for the podcast and especially the nostalgic ones, George. Thank you, George. I appreciate your support. Yeah, I never did get a Mickey Mouse phone. That was actually way more expensive than the phones I had. I had the big push button phone, which I think was like $19.95 when I got it for my birthday, and that clear phone was like $12.95 or something. It was less than that. So that was the memories from the phones. If you still have memories about using the standard phone, the home landline, and you didn't get them in, still next week I want to hear more because I love these memories. Or if you had a pager, patreon.com/BRGS podcast, let me know because I want to have more of these stories. And I didn't have to use we didn't have to use a area code to call anybody around here until just a couple years ago. It's kind of a new thing around here. Anyway, today's topic. It's hot. It's dog days of summer. I mean, it is dog days of summer, middle of August. And when I was a kid, this is the time when I would get on my bike and ride around before school would start. In one of the places I used to ride my bike in Florissant, where I grew up, this town in North St. Louis County, we had like a main street, and there was a place called Meyer's Confectionary. And it was just like a little, it wasn't a chain or anything. It was just a family run, um, little confectionery, kind of a five and dime. This would have been in the 80s. And one of the things you could go in there with just a couple of bucks, you could buy penny candy. And, just like they had little trinkets and stuff too. But I was thinking about my penny candy that I used to get all the time because, you wouldn't have a lot of money. Like, if you had a lot of money, you go spend it on something big, like a toy or something. But if you had penny candy, if you had money and you could just go buy, like they'd literally give you a small brown bag, like you brown bag your lunch, but you get a smaller version of that and you could fill it with penny candy. So I was thinking about these penny candies, but I want to know like what some of your favorite penny candies were from your childhood. So I'm going to go through some of these that I was just thinking of off the top of my head when I was on the treadmill the other day and see if you have memories of these and which ones because I'm not going to hit, obviously, I'm not going to hit all of them. What were some of your favorite penny candies? The ones I remember from my childhood were candy cigarettes. Oh my God, we could not have those nowadays. There were two versions. There were some that were bubble gum. You blow on them and a puff of smoke would come out. They had like a paper wrapper on the outside. They were bubble gum. Or there were some that were so gross. They were like chalk sticks and they had like red tips to look like fire. Kids would eat those things. They were disgusting, but you would take them and roll them because I guess it's like a 50s thing. Like roll them up in your sleeve so you look like you had one up on your shoulder. I just remember doing that. Let's see. We had root beer barrels, which were kind of tasty, looking like little beer barrels, but they're root beer. Root beer was kind of a novelty taste back in the like early 80s. Those things were tasty. I'll get those every once in a while. Let's see here. Bottle caps. How about bottle caps? They were kind of like sweet tarts, but they had different flavors. And they were, I don't know if they were cheaper than sweet tarts because sweet tarts were good, but sweet tarts were kind of like the name brand. I think bottle caps maybe were the knockoff and they didn't taste quite as good as sweet tarts, but they were good in a pinch. I love those. Let's see what else. Biddo honeys. I used to love, and I haven't seen these in forever. I don't know if they make these anymore. Biddo honeys, they're like in little red and blue and yellow wrappers. And basically, I mean, it's, truth in advertising here. They're just little bites of honey. And, they kind of had like little wax paper around them. And then they had Mary Janes, which were very similar. And I think they were just like molasses. Did you guys have Mary Janes? I think they were on sticks, maybe. Now, the other thing that the penny candy area always had, and I hate these things. I never got these, but they were always like the thing. And maybe you love these things. I think they're kind of controversial. Tootsie Rolls. How do you feel about Tootsie Rolls? Because there's all kinds of Tootsie Rolls. There's a classic Tootsie Roll. There's a little bitty baby one. There's big Tootsie Rolls. There's different flavors of Tootsie Rolls. They're always cheap. To me, they're always garbage. Oh, they're gross. When I was a teacher, when I taught sixth grade, we did DARE every semester, and our DARE officer would give the kids every time they gave a correct answer. Officer Hart, he would chuck the kids a Tootsie Roll for every correct answer they would give through the entire course, like for the whole semester. He was always throwing Tootsie Rolls. And every time he would give a kid a Tootsie Roll, I would be sitting in the back of the classroom because my desk was in the back. So I didn't leave when he taught DARE for a half hour every week. I'd sit in the back, and every time a kid got one, the rule was Mr. Rallman got one. So I get like 7 Tootsie Rolls like every time he came in and visited, not to catch them. So I'm catching these Tootsie Rolls and I had to pretend like I liked them. This went on for like 10 years. So I had so many Tootsie Rolls, and the joke was, this is how I was as a teacher. I would tell my class, look, Officer Hart thinks I like Tootsie Rolls, and I don't want to be a rude person. I told him this is a social skill. You can't be rude, right? So we're never going to tell Officer Hart that I do not like Tootsie Rolls. So I'm always going to accept them, and I'm always going to be excited about them, but I will give them away to somebody else after he leaves. So, but we can never let him in on the joke. And so they never did either. So I'd always be so excited. He'd chuck those things and I'd be like, yes. And then he would leave and I'd be like, I'd give them out to the kids who didn't get them. That was kind of our little joke there. Okay, back to the topic. Atomic fireballs. You guys get atomic fireballs? I love those suckers. They'd be almost too hot, but not really. They were like jawbreakers that were cinnamon. They still sell those and they're super good. I love those. Gobstoppers, kind of jawbreakers in different flavors. Those are really good. Trying to think what else. Bazooka Joe gum. It was the gum that had the comic strip, I believe, like wrapped around it. So you got a little comic and a piece of gum that would bust your teeth. Pink chewing gum was with that. Boston baked beans in the little box. Those were good. Lemon heads, same kind of box, but lemon heads were so sour. You would chew on those. And like if you chew, I don't know, maybe this didn't happen to you, but when I chewed them, they would almost give me like electric shock back in the back of my jaw. It'd be like, oh, so sour. Like I could feel like electricity almost in like my jaw, but like my jaw, like hinge. Oh, it was almost painful, but it was so good. So I got lemon heads. I would get gator gum. Now, you guys remember gator gum? There was a gum that was made by Gatorade. There was two flavors. It was the green and the orange. Fun fact, because I pitched baseball in high school. I pitched varsity all 4 years. And Adam Wainwright does this, but I did this before Adam Wainwright. My grandma, this is a fun fact. My grandma would get me a pack of Gator gum every time I started a baseball game. Now, I didn't start pitch. Obviously, pitchers don't start every game, but when it was my rotational turn to start a game, she would give me a pack of Gator gum. I'd throw it in my back pocket, and I would chew a new piece of Gator gum every inning that I pitched. And when I left the mound that inning, I'd spit it out, and I'd have a fresh piece every new inning. So you'd see my gum sitting on the mound as I left the mound every inning. So hopefully there were 7 pieces at the end of the game. But yeah, Gator gum. I love Gator gum. They don't make it anymore. I wish they still did. So that's kind of, those are some of the penny candy things that I would get. Of course, you would get just random pieces of gum, Big League Chew. Now that wasn't penny candy. That was like a big purchase, but these are the things you could get for like a quarter. Some of these things you could get for like 3 for a quarter, and one of the other things I wanted, probably the last one, now and laters. Do you guys remember those now and laters? I just remember that we would get these at Meyer's, but there was like a black market for now and laters later on during the school year in middle school. People would, I don't know. All I remember was some people's parents had like, the memberships to Sam's Club. And so they would go buy these boxes and boxes of now and laters at Sam's. And then some kids would bring these now and laters to 7th grade, to our middle school, and would sell these things for a profit. There was like this huge black market my 7th grade year at Hazelwood Junior High that, you buy these now and laters from these kids, but I know they were making money on them. But I just remember it was like a black market for those. So those were some of my memories of penny candy, but there were so many different varieties. So what were your favorites? Where did you get them? And what were your garbage picks? Like mine was Tootsie Rolls. Oh, still can't stand them. But there's a funny story behind it, right? The dare officer, Officer Hart, always chucking them to me. I couldn't tell my kids. So what are your memories of penny candy? That's what I want to share on next week's show. Stay cool out there, but stay awesome. I love you guys, and I want you to have a great week, and we'll get back together next Tuesday. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.